Don't call my Sonic fandom into question. I got 2 copies of '06. I'm unstoppable. Nah, but kidding aside, I wanted to do 2 things with this video. Welcome the new subscribers, and do a little self-vindicating on some of my wishes on that Sonic Origins video. But if you're not subscribed, you didn't watch that video, or you don't really care about subbing, well, that's cool too. I'll put a time somewhere and you can skip all of this. But keep in mind, it's going to be a pretty casual conversation. I might call it some backlash for dramatic effect, but it's really not that serious. I mean, it's some hypothetical wishes for a Sonic Origins update, essentially, since you can't really change the game that's already out. What I wanted to do was go the whole clickbait route, put my face in the thumbnail, all concerned. And the title would be something like, Addressing the Sonic Controversy. You know, typical YouTube stuff. But nah, that's going a bit too far. Instead, I'm just gonna put off the Super Tails purists. Sorry about that. And I figured a certain channel update could be in order. So if you're here watching this video, you're probably subbed from the Sonic Origins video, or maybe even the Collections video. And you're probably expecting a new Sonic video at some point, but it probably wasn't this one. I mean, I wasn't even expecting to make this video. There'll definitely be more Sonic videos, but it's not going to be coming up next. So with my style of video, sometimes it's 2, maybe 3 months in between uploads. So I didn't want you to forget, who is this guy? Why is he showing me a Final Fantasy video? Why would I be interested? Hey, Theodore! Say hi to all the people back home. Everybody, this is Theodore. I want you to meet my best buddy. And I just didn't want the next video to come out and then forget who I am. It's like, who is this guy? Why should I care about Final Fantasy? Because that's going to be the next video. It's a Crisis Core comparison kind of thing. I've done a lot of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts on the channel already, so I'm kind of curious, what's the overlap in Sonic fans and Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy? I mean, they're very different games, but obviously you can like all of them, because, I mean, 3 of my favorites. But yeah, Crisis Core is next. There'll be some other Kingdom Hearts and whatnot in the future. I think after Crisis Core, it's going to be Sonic Frontiers video. I was kind of hesitant on doing a Frontiers video at first, and now that enough time has passed, it doesn't really need a review. Everybody's kind of already said their thoughts on it. And another angle I was going to look at is well, what can be next for Sonic Frontiers? Which is something I do in a lot of my videos, you know. Even the Origins video, I had a section on Origins Plus, oh, what else could they do to make this better, to add on to it? I was like, oh, what else can they do to Sonic Frontiers? And then they announced their roadmap for 2023, which is cool, but I've got one more angle I could go about it. It'll be like a package of all 3 points. But I think that's going to be next after Crisis Core, but that's going to take some time. Crisis Core video, I finished the script recently, recorded all the voiceovers, started some of the editing. I have most of the footage I need, but with these kinds of videos, I always have to go back and re-record sections, so it'll be at least a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before that video comes out. So yeah, I just wanted to do this in the meantime. There will be a Frontiers video, and then sometime in the future beyond that, I have a whole Sonic series planned. I don't want to give away too much info yet. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be kind of controversial too, so I really want to make sure that I present it in the best way. But before we get into those Sonic controversies, I guess we'll just focus on Origins for now. See, the thing about the Origins video is I kind of closed the book on Sonic Origins on November 2nd when that video was uploaded. So I had June to November that I was in the mindset, Sonic Origins, okay, this and that, revise the script, do all the editing. In that time I was also doing the Mario video, so that's why what put it off until November. it still would have taken a good amount of time, but I had to get Mario out first and then Origins. But I mean, I started writing that script on the 23rd of June when Origins came out. So yeah, and there's about a 2-month span where, you know, that video just kind of sat there. It got good amount of views. I mean, 3,000 for the size of my channel is pretty cool. But it kind of sat at 3,000 for a while. And then in the new year, beginning of January, just completely out of nowhere, it started getting a lot of attention. Went from 3,000 views to now it's at, let me check this, I think like 95, 97, 98,000. So yeah, 3,000 to 98,000, it's a pretty good jump. My Sonic Collections video, I think that might have had like 2,000 or 3,000. Once the views started tapering off on the Origins video, the views on the Collections video started going up. So that's at 27,000 right now, which is awesome. A lot of Sonic attention on my channel. And I guess that's why I wanted to put one more Sonic video out, just to kind of like, as like a channel update, a welcome, and a way to say don't be put off when you see a Final Fantasy video, because I do a lot of those too. But with that Origins video getting some attention, and I don't want to say it blew up, because that sounds like I'm getting a big head about it, but I also don't want to be like, oh, it's only 98,000 views. That sounds ungrateful. But since that video got a lot of attention, it's getting a lot of comments coming in, and now my mind is going back into Origins mode. It's like, oh man, I thought I closed the book on that. Now I gotta think about this aspect, that aspect. But it's all in good fun. But that's where the second part of this video is gonna come in, because now my mind's back churning the Origins wheel. I should be in Final Fantasy mode right now, but I'm like, oh wait, this about Origins, that about Origins. But yeah, I mean, it's all in good fun, and I just want to like casually address some of that stuff, defend my points a little bit, you know? You know, this is my first day playing Sonic. But yeah, this type of video where I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head, you know, there's no notes here at all. It's not my usual style. I think I'm at my best when I like write all the notes down, put it all into the script, revise, move things around, edit it in a way that I want to present it. It's really not easy for me to candidly talk to the camera, but you know, I do what I can. I do have a few playthrough videos on my channel. 2 of them are Sonic related. Sonic Jam Easy Mode, and then another Origins video that predates Origins release. It was kind of like a justification for this collection existing, because a lot of people were like, oh, it's another Sonic collection, oh, we need another Genesis collection. But I think the important point of Sonic Origins, you know, despite whatever flaws, it's them finally bringing the mobile versions to console, which took 9 years to do. Contrary to popular belief, I do know that Origins is the mobile versions, but I'll get into that later. Alright, so because this video isn't in my normal style, don't be surprised if it becomes unlisted at some point. I mean, that really depends on how messy it ends up being once I get it into editing. But even if I do unlist it, it'll still be available in some form. Like, I'll leave a link somewhere. Just like in my other Origins video, the one that predates Origins release, I have that one unlisted just because it's like outdated information. It's kind of like speculation. Even if I stand by a good amount of the points, like, you can still watch it. It's just in the description of the changes in Origins video if you really want to watch that. This one, I'll leave a link somewhere if I do unlist it. If not, whatever, it's staying up. I just don't want my channel to become too messy with, you know, I got my scripted videos that I work really hard on, and then there's just like a video like this where I got some gameplay footage and I'm just kind of talking off the top of my dome. But either way, it'll stay up in some form, and if it doesn't, well, this part of the video won't even be accessed, so no one will know. Nah, it'll stay up. But yeah, I like the style the best when I like write out a script and do like some heavy editing on it. And that's what you'll see mostly on this channel. I know YouTube you can kind of separate through playlists. And they just recently did like a live tab and a shorts tab. I wish I could customize my own tab so I could have like the videos I really care about in one tab. They're like playthrough videos. I don't do live, but it'd be cool to separate the playthrough videos. And then another tab for like the meme-like videos, like the Mickey Mouse one, or even the Mario blooper video. I mean, it's not really a meme, but it's not like the heavily edited and scripted videos. It's just, here's something for a little bit of fun. But basically, I just want to say I'm happy for all the people that subscribed. If you're not subscribed, I'm happy you're watching anyway. I've been doing YouTube for a while now with, like I said, the Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts video. I have some Harvest Moon videos, Mario, a few Sonic ones, and it's cool that, you know, 2 of the Sonic videos are kind of getting a lot of attention. The one Mario video did get a lot of views. I think it's 123,000, which I'm grateful for. The big thing about the Origins video though is that one is one that like I really care about. Like I put a lot of work into it. The April Fool's Mario one, I mean I did put some work into it, but it's kind of just like, oh, something put up for some fun. And April Fools, obviously you're expecting to be a joke, and if people are upset then it's like, well, sorry, but April Fools. I talk all about April Fools in that other Sonic Easy Mode video, because that was uploaded on April Fools, even though that itself isn't an April Fools video. But yeah, I'm just interested to see, like, now that there are more subscribers, how many are going to click on this video or click on the next video, how that will affect the channel. Because I haven't uploaded since the 2 Sonic videos started getting a lot of attention, but I do have a decent amount of trickle down under the other videos. I'm just interested to see like the future of the channel, how things are gonna go. What's gonna be the next video that's gonna get attention? How does the algorithm decide, you know what? Let's push this video right now. All right, let's push that. Because like I said, it's been 2 months since that one video came out. So like what really set it off to, you know, start recommending it? I don't really know, but I'm just happy it happened. Alright, but I'm just kind of rambling at this point. So when it comes to comments, alright, so all of the comments that I'm going to be kind of responding to are ones that multiple people have left. Since I am a smaller channel, I want to be careful about things like that. I'm not trying to call out any individuals, but if something's been left by a couple people, then maybe it requires some examination, you know? So I'm not going to call out any individuals unless I state them by name, like Terios3 and Knuckles, who let me know that activating the Sonic 3 items in Sonic 1 and 2 gives you the ability to do the insta-shield, which I didn't even realize when I was like doing my testing. The Sonic 3 items isn't something I spent a lot of time on. I just kind of activated them to show a little footage of it and be like, hey, it's there. And it's something I didn't even realize, but it also kind of led to some further testing when I was doing some Dropdash stuff. But we'll get into all of that Dropdash stuff later. Or there is another commenter, I can't find it on here, but they pointed out that Sonic CD, I'm Out of Here, is still in classic mode of the game. Not the actual voice, but the action of him jumping off the screen. Which, that one I was kind of surprised about. I figured that everything in classic mode was just the anniversary modes, but certain elements taken out. I wouldn't expect them to put one thing back in, which is the Sonic jumping off the screen. But that's in there if you play classic mode. I tested it out and it's interesting. But I guess it kind of makes sense since game overs are back in it. I just kind of thought that they took that segment out of anniversary mode because they took the voice out, so they're just like, let's just scrap that altogether. But I guess it's more of a game over issue, which makes sense. And then there's Nexus X, who pointed out that Knuckles in Sonic 2 Lock-On has tan arms, but in Origins, he has red arms. I don't think I really noticed that, but arm color is a very touchy subject in the Sonic community, so I'm just not gonna touch that one. So when it comes to comments, I think the great thing about YouTube is that the conversation doesn't really end when the video ends. So like you can scroll down, leave comments, and kind of add on. That really went out already. If you've watched any of my old videos, like my really old videos, you might know that I have these lights that use these battery packs, and when you try to film a video, the lights always go out. It's really annoying, but you know what? It's been years and I still haven't replaced them, so this is what I have to deal with. So I've been on YouTube a long time. Like, besides this channel, I've got another channel that I don't upload on, but I use to kind of keep track of all the subscriptions I won and everything. It's dated like 2008, so it's been a while. But one thing I've always liked is like the conversation doesn't really end when the video ends. So you can see the video and scroll down and like add on to it or read what other people want to say about it. Like, oh, you missed this, or oh, this is my interpretation of that. Something that obviously you can't do with TV, but you ever get those articles on your phone? Just read through them when you're bored at work. And then somebody will have like a hot take about a video game, and you scroll down and there's no comment section, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cowardly. Can't even have criticism on your own article. But yeah, I like to be like really thorough with these videos. So, I mean, there's going to be some things that I miss that I can, you know, somebody brings something up in the comments and it's like, oh, well, yeah, I can reply and elaborate on it. I can add on to it. I can give some insight on why I did this way, or why I think this way, or why, you know, mistook this for that, or, you know. So, I mean, that's where comments come, like, really useful. Like, okay, I'll just add on to the things I've already said. But because I like to be so thorough with everything I'm presenting, when I start seeing some comments come in, like kind of repeat of that comment and another one, if I start seeing the same comments over and over, it makes me like reevaluate. Like, since my channel's still small enough, I read every comment as it comes in, especially with the repeat comments. Like, I see it and I'm like, oh, did I miss that? Oh, was I not clear enough on that? It makes me like reevaluate, like look at the video and like, oh, did I forget to mention that? Was I not clear about that? Now, I will say the reception on the Origins video is mostly positive. I mean, it's got the 98,000 views, which that alone is awesome. Like, okay, 98,000 people at least clicked on the video. Maybe watched it all the way through, maybe clicked away, but at least they got there at some point. And as with most videos on YouTube, you know, the majority just watches the video and that's that. A smaller amount decides, you know, like button or dislike. The thing that sucks about the human brain is like you could have overwhelming likes on a video or like overwhelming positive reception in any capacity, and then it's like a few negative ones that kind of get to you. Where it's like, okay, there's about 2,000 likes on this. I'm not even gonna click the dislikes because, what's the matter? If they disliked it, that's fine, but like, I mean, just look at all the people that did like it. But then you see like a 96 go down to a 95 and you're like, oh, it stings a little. Even though the logical part of my brain knows like, okay, that's a small difference. You don't gotta focus on that. But with the comments, they're mostly positive too. Like, oh, this is kind of my experience with this game growing up, or this is how I've always looked at it, which is, you know, those comments are great to read. I like looking at those and seeing different people's perspectives on different elements of the game, you know? And then like the truly negative comments, like the ones that are just like, you know, just attacking you for whatever reason. I mean, there is some of those, but to me, those are the easiest to just kind of dismiss because it's like, what's even the basis for what you're saying? Like those ones, I'm just like, all right, that's fine. The ones that kind of get to me though are the ones that like, oh, you forgot this, or hey, you're wrong about this, and it's like, well, am I though? Like, then I really start to think about it. Was I not clear about that? Was my perspective not really good enough? And again, it's been 2 months since the video released, so I'm like, what was the context of me saying that then? So since my mind went back into like Origins mode upon that video being uploaded, I started thinking a lot about certain details, and I think I should like clear some of this up. So I wrote out like a whole essay in the comment sections, and it's like, well, I keep seeing this comment come up, I keep seeing this comment, so maybe I should address some of this. Not that it really matters, obviously, but it's like, you know what? Since I like to be thorough, I'm just gonna type it all out, just do my best to like give the context to it. One of those was, mobile versions being in Sonic Origins. Like I said, contrary to popular belief, I do know that Origins contains the mobile versions, and to me that's kind of the whole point of Origins, besides Sonic 3 obviously. But it's like, hey, these mobile versions that have been on the phone for 9 years, I can finally play with a real controller. I mean, not that these are great controllers, but you know, don't gotta use a touchscreen or like do Bluetooth controller to the cell phone and all that. So I think a lot of people, like outside of my video, seem to be a little bit like upset that Origins has the mobile versions, which is weird. Like you shouldn't be upset that Origins uses the remastered games. You should kind of be upset that it took them so long to do it. It's like, oh, that's lazy. That game came out in 2013. It's like, well, yeah, but why recreate it all from scratch? Now, I think there's some more changes they could have done on top of the mobile releases, which they do make some very small changes. You know, coins instead of lives, Dropdash, which I'll get into Dropdash. The voice clips taken out of Sonic CD is also a change from 2011, which I'll get into that too. But yeah, I mean, I already have it all pretty much typed out in that essay in the comments section, but I mean, yeah, Sonic Origins to me is basically, the point of it is, hey, these mobile versions that a lot of people haven't been able to play, or haven't wanted to play because it's on a cell phone, well, here you go. You can play it now. And Sonic 3? Well, that makes it that much better. But I think the biggest comment I was getting on that video is about the mobile versions. Like, it made me stop and think, like, did I not address that? Did I just kind of assume everybody knows that? Which there is some of that to an extent. Like, I'm not trying to make it seem like, oh, everything in Sonic Origins is unique to Sonic Origins. I mean, just imagine the section where I'm talking about the spin dash in Sonic 1. The original game didn't have it, and neither did the Sonic Classics 3 and 1. But Sonic Jam added the spin dash to one of the modes. But if you play the other mode, the spin dash isn't going to be there. Sonic Genesis on the Game Boy Advance, despite all of its flaws, they still incorporated the spin dash into that game. Sonic Mega, like, this game didn't, this game did. Like, that's just, like, my only concern with doing that video is take the oldest version, original release, compare it to the newest version, Sonic Origins. Like, my concern wasn't too much in the point in time each, you know, newer thing was introduced. It's mostly just, this version didn't have it, this version did. So like, oh hey, the mobile games have widescreen. Like, well, yeah, the mobile games are the remaster, and the remasters are contained within Origins. And I understand the title might slightly be misleading. Every change made in Origins. It might be semantics, but I don't think that necessarily means that every change is exclusive to Sonic Origins. I mean, you see what I'm saying? This is every change that was made, or at least an attempt to show every change that was made. I'm not gonna, you know, every bug fix and all of that. Don't need to cover things that minute. But every change that was made, presented within Sonic Origins. I mean, when you do a YouTube title, you can't just... Every change made within the mobile versions, carried over to Sonic Origins, but also some of it is unique to Sonic Origins, especially the Sonic 3 section. It'd be one heck of a title. But yeah, every change made in Sonic Origins. It's snappy, it's to the point. You know, you show a little thumbnail with Sonic wide eyes. Old games, new features. I mean, they are new features, whether they're new 2022 or they're new 2013. They're still new. Anyway, my whole point with that, see a lot of comments saying the same thing, like, hey, these are all from the mobile games. I'm like, did I not mention that? But then I go back into the video, 12 seconds in, literally 12 seconds, I mention that it's a collection of the mobile games that took 9 years to finally come to console. 12 seconds in, I kind of make that point. So I think I'm kind of vindicated on that point. Not to mention that I show the mobile versions frequently throughout, and you can see in the bottom left corner I have the year to show that, hey, it is the mobile version. And when there's something specifically different in Origins that wasn't the same in the mobile versions, I'm like specifically showing that. I think I do this in each of the games, you know, 1, 2, and CD, where like, hey, this one, see, you can also see that the lives have been replaced by a coin. And I show the mobile version with the lives, and I show the mobile version with the coins. So you know what, I'm gonna mark that down as vindicated. 12 seconds into the video, I mention mobile versions. But I kind of cover all of that in that, you know, essay comment pinned on the video, so I mean, I think that's enough about it. The other thing that I also mentioned in there is about the spin dash. So I said that the spin dash is implemented nicely into Sonic 1 without feeling out of place. So I know that the spin dash in Origins is kind of a hot button issue. Really my point in saying that was mostly about the level design. Like, that's a game that doesn't even use the spin dash. So the fact that I can use the drop dash and still feels pretty intuitive in a game that didn't originally have it, or even the spin dash, I mean, I think just by that context, it is implemented nicely into Sonic 1 without feeling out of place. I mean, I stand by that. Now, I know the roll lock, as I see it's been called, is what turns a lot of people off from Sonic 1 and 2 drop dash. So upon seeing like a lot of those comments, I was kind of like trying to put my mind back in the context, like, oh yeah, why did I say that was implemented nicely? And it's like, oh, it's just about the level design. But I decided I'm gonna go back into Origins and do some testing. I found that the roll lock isn't implemented, it's just a consequence of how the physics work. And if you do a roll in the original Sonic 1, you can't change directions mid-air after the roll. If you do a spin dash in Sonic 2, you can't change directions mid-air after doing a spin dash. Sonic 3, you also can't change directions after doing a spin dash, but using the Insta-Shield kind of breaks that and then lets you turn around mid-air. So then Sonic CD, play the original game and do a little testing, do a spin dash, you jump, mid-air you can turn around. I mean, there's a lot of differences between the two Sonic sequels, Sonic CD and Sonic 2, because they were made by different teams in different countries. And I guess that's one thing in Sonic CD, they decided like, hey, we'll let you turn around mid-air after a spin dash. So, for those reasons alone, the way that Sonic CD was originally made, and Sonic 3 having the Insta-Shield, that's why in Origins, Sonic CD and Sonic 3, you can change directions doing the drop dash. Sonic 1 and 2, you can't, because in those games you can't change directions after a spin dash, and there's no Insta-Shield to break that. Unless you activate the Sonic 3 shields, which also gives you the Insta-Shield, which then you can do the drop dash the way you expect. So I mean, I think like little things like that are interesting to like, that's why I like, you know, comments being there so much, because even though the people leaving that comment are kind of disagreeing with what I was saying, it gives me a chance to kind of elaborate on why I said it and to do some further testing to really understand like, alright, so why is the spin dash weird in Sonic 1 and 2? Why is it not weird in CD and 3? With Sonic 3, it's probably mostly understood that it's like, oh, well, this is remade in 2022 with the drop dash in mind. Headcanon took that into account and made it work the way it should, which could be true. I don't know all the details of that arrangement. More than anything, it's just the fact that the Insta-Shield breaks that roll lock. So you can have the fluid direction changing drop dash in all 4 of these games, which is cool that you can do it, which is kind of my idea with Super Sonic in Sonic 1, Super Tails in Sonic 2. You can do it, but you have to take extra steps to do it, and it doesn't save your game, which I guess we're going into the next point. Super Sonic in Sonic 1. But I know it sounds crazy to want a Super Sonic in Sonic 1 even though he wasn't there to begin with, but isn't that kind of the point of an updated re-release? Like, if they changed lore details in Sonic Adventure 2, okay, I understand getting upset about that. But small little details that, you know, let's be honest, most people who played these games on the Genesis didn't really pay much attention to. You put Super Sonic in Sonic 1 and just be like, oh hey, that's pretty cool. I liked how he's in Sonic 2. Now he's in Sonic 1, that's dope. I don't know. I'll be honest, maybe I underestimated the Sonic fan base, but I never knew that they were so adamant about the classic Sonic lore. Later games, yeah, I've always understood that, but I never knew the classic lore was held to such high standard like this. Genuinely, I didn't know. Sonic 1 didn't have Super Sonic, so Sonic 1 can never have any addition. Except for Tails and Knuckles. But not Super Sonic. Except if you want to put in a cheat. But don't save your game. I don't know, just saying. Super Sonic in Sonic 1 is another comment I get a lot, explaining like why it is that you can't have Super Sonic in Sonic 1, and you know, I appreciate it, and I understand, okay, it's lore details. Super Sonic wasn't in Sonic 1, and he is in Sonic 2, and the official reason for that is the 7th Chaos Emerald doesn't come about until West Side Island, so once you get the 7th, you can turn Super. Pretty simple but effective explanation. Or my perspective with Super Sonic and Sonic 1, I mean, mostly my complaint was that you couldn't save the game while doing that. And also I wanted like a Sonic and Tails duo mode, which, to be fair, in the mobile version, is possible to do after you unlock Tails. You can save your game after playing as Sonic and Tails with like the little plus in the corner. In Origins you can't do that unless you go into the cheat menu. But I guess before going into any of this, I should give my sort of justification for why lore changes should be acceptable in Sonic Origins. So Sonic Origins comes with 3 like really important modes of gameplay. Now to be fair, Sega didn't really utilize these modes in the way I feel like they should have, but you got Anniversary Mode, Classic Mode, and Story Mode. So Anniversary Mode, in my view of this, should be the place where you can make any and all changes, improvements, whatever you want to call it, to these games without necessarily affecting the lore of the series. So that's where you have Tails in Sonic 1, Tails in Sonic CD, Knuckles in Sonic 1, Knuckles in Sonic 2, among other changes. It's like, okay, it's Anniversary Mode, it's meant to be an update. If they didn't want to update these games and make some quality of life changes and whatnot, well then they would have just released the Genesis games all over again. Maybe at best added a widescreen feature, but not changed anything else about it. But they did add these changes. Now to be fair, the mobile games did have you unlocking Tails and Knuckles in Sonic 1. I guess the unlock kind of separates it from the lore. Like, okay, we understand Tails shouldn't be in South Island. Tails is supposed to be at some other island during the events of Tails' adventure, probably. I don't know exactly how they fit together, but I'm sure someone will let me know. But Tails isn't supposed to be there on South Island. Knuckles isn't supposed to be there on South Island. The unlockable aspect on the mobile versions does separate it and make it, okay, so you already beat the game as Sonic, here you go, now you can play as Tails and Knuckles. Well, the thing about Origins is they didn't do that, so that concept is already void when it comes to Sonic Origins. There's no unlocking from the start, which I think is fun, it's liberating that you can just start up the game and, you know what, I've played Sonic 1 so many times, but now I can just jump in as Tails straight from the get-go. I think that's what I did. I was like, let me try Tails out real quick without unlocking it. I think that's, since these games have been re-released so many times, it is nice to just jump in with the new characters, new characters, 2013 still, newer characters, and, just play the game like that without having to go through and unlock it. Just with that, Sonic Origins inherently doesn't have that separation because there's no unlocking. But I also think that's okay because it's labeled Anniversary Mode. You can make some changes that don't have to affect the lore, and you can play as Tails, you can play as Knuckles. You don't have to unlock them. And that's why I was kind of hoping that within the context of Anniversary Mode being able to make changes, you can get that 7th Chaos Emerald, which they already made a special stage for. The premise of it being implemented into the game already without going to the menu and changing certain elements to make it possible is just more fun. Let me just run through Sonic 1. I'll get that 7th Chaos Emerald, I'll turn Super. And there's some comments like, why would you even want Super Sonic in Sonic 1? Why would you even want Tails in Sonic 1? I mean, just the straightforward, simple answer is just, it's more fun that way. Tails in Sonic 1, I'm playing the game in a way that I haven't played it before. Again, mobile version, but I didn't want to play on my phone. So I was waiting for something like Origins to come out, and now, with controllers in my hand, I can play Sonic 1 with a different perspective. Playing the game as Tails, playing the game as Knuckles is just awesome. Running through Sonic 1 as Super Sonic is awesome. Like, I don't really mind that it takes away from the difficulty. Super Sonic already, like, has some trade-offs. Like, yeah, you're invincible, yeah, you're really fast, but you can also get crushed pretty easily. You can also run off the edge pretty easily. If you're mid-boss fight and you run out of rings, well then you're vulnerable. You have no health, essentially. You know, I just think Sonic 1, more fun with Super Sonic, more fun with Tails and Knuckles, you know. Why not include that 7th special stage since you already made it? Like, yeah, I understand all of this is accessed from the cheat menu. Mostly my biggest concern was like, why can't I save after doing this? I don't even mean debug mode, because I know that things can get messy with that. I mean, just Super Sonic, there we go, let's do this. But back to the 3 different modes. Anniversary mode can make any and all changes. Classic mode, they really botched Classic mode. It should just be the original ROMs, just that's it, original ROMs. But Classic mode should just be the games in their purest form. This is how it was released. You can't do a spin dash in Sonic 1. Tails and Knuckles aren't going to be there through level select. In their purest forms, these are how the games were. But they kind of mess that up too, because there's these new features that are there, and it's just a whole weird mess of a situation. But then the third one, Story mode, would have more importance in this kind of ideal situation too, because where Anniversary mode makes all these changes, Classic mode makes no changes, Story mode would only have the changes that follow the lore. There's not going to be a 7th Chaos Emerald in Sonic 1, because that's not how the original game went. There's not going to be a Super Sonic form, or Tails or Knuckles in Story mode, because that's not how the original games went. Still preserving the lore, but giving you the widescreen feature, giving you the coins, no game overs, retrying special stages, the features of Anniversary mode without the lore details. So why have 3 different modes, and then not any of them really serve their purpose? I mean, I guess Story mode, you know, does its Anniversary mode and it strings together the games, but it's essentially just, we'll do Anniversary mode with everything in Anniversary mode, except you'll just be Sonic, and Tails will join automatically in Sonic 2. So I think more than anything, Sega should get a talking to about how they utilize these modes, not me wanting things in Anniversary mode. Because I understand there is a place for the lore to be preserved. It would be Story mode, there would be Classic mode. Anniversary mode, I really feel should just add these new things in, just from the get-go. It's just more fun. But there's another thing where, like, you know, you gotta start to look at, like, the cracks where some of these arguments kind of fall apart. When you beat Sonic 1 in Anniversary mode, Story mode, I think it's even in Classic mode for whatever reason, you're gonna get that ending cutscene where it shows the 6 Chaos Emeralds, then the 7th one joins, and then they go towards West Side Island. You get that cutscene whether you collected 0 Chaos Emeralds, whether you collected 7, even if you're playing as Tails, you're gonna get that ending. So there's already like a disconnect, like, shouldn't you only get that scene if you collected all 6 of the emeralds? Because then it's keeping the lore details intact. Like, finishing Sonic 1 without all the emeralds, I think, is kind of agreed upon that that is a non-canon playthrough. You don't get all the emeralds, then you don't play the game to its fullest extent. It's a non-canon playthrough. Get a game over, well obviously that's a non-canon playthrough. Only way that's applicable is in Ocarina of Time apparently. If you get a game over, it starts a new timeline. It's mostly understood that the canon playthrough of Sonic 1 is you play through as Sonic and you get all 6 Chaos Emeralds. So that's when that scene would come in, oh you got all the emeralds and now they're going to West Side Island. So there's already kind of a disconnect. Finish the game with 1 Chaos Emerald, it still shows all 6. Finish the game with 7 Chaos Emeralds, because even the little animation at the end shows 7 Chaos Emeralds in a circle. Finish it with 7, it still shows you the same scene. To really finish off what I'm trying to say about Super Sonic and Sonic 1, biggest reason why I think, it's just better with Super Sonic, even if it goes against the lore, it's a reward for getting all the emeralds. It's kind of disappointing when that first time you finish the game, doing all the special stages, you get all 6 Chaos Emeralds. You beat the game, there's a very slight difference in the ending where you get those glove world looking flowers. It's oh, hey, I'm happy I went through all those special stages. Which is the reason why when Sonic 2 came out, they're alright, let's really give you a reward for collecting all the emeralds. But with the 6 emerald, the 7 emerald lore details, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the manual, doesn't it state that the 7 Chaos Emeralds are kind of just already at West Side Island? And at the end of Sonic Origins, obviously they're at South Island, but then they join together and then go to West Side Island. So even if that 7th Chaos Emerald is unlocked at that point, or even if that 7 Chaos Emerald is reawakened at that point, isn't there already some conflict there where Sonic 2 is just yeah, the emeralds are here. The civilization that used to live on West Side Island, the emeralds have always just kind of been here. And then Sonic 1 is oh, these emeralds are part of South Island, and at the end of Sonic Origins they come together and then shoot off towards West Side Island. I don't know, I'm just saying that I don't think all the pieces are ever going to fit perfectly in place. Alright, but while we're still on the topic of Sonic 1, I want to talk about Scrap Brain real quick. Scrap Brain 3, Labyrinth 4. So, one of the commenters stated that the reason you go down to Labyrinth Zone again, I think we can all agree we don't want to go back to Labyrinth Zone, but the reason you go back to Labyrinth Zone is to see the environmental effect on the world because of Dr. Robotnik's involvement, which is a cool explanation. I do like that, but I feel if that's really what they're trying to go for, then wouldn't showing Green Hill Zone in a destroyed state get that message across better than Labyrinth Zone? Labyrinth Zone is just rocks, water, coral. Green Hill Zone is lush, green, you got the crystal water and, beautiful environment. And Dr. Robotnik's plan is already in effect at that point, which is why Sonic's chasing after him. That's why there's robots, or badniks, all over. He already has his plan in place. Alright, so you finish Labyrinth Zone, then there's Starlight Zone. And, I could see it okay, Starlight is basically the highway from Labyrinth all the way up to Scrap Brain. And then while you're going through Scrap Brain, you go through Act 1 and 2, and then you see these effects taking place on Labyrinth afterward, and it'd be okay, Scrap Brain is positioned above the ruins of Labyrinth. It's okay, I could see that. But why is it that that change takes place within the span of 2 zones without seeing any catastrophic thing to happen to cause that change? Now I'm going to bring up an interview, and I don't take interviews as gospel when it comes to old Sonic games, but there is an interview where Yuji Naka said that they wanted to create a unique zone for that part of Scrap Brain, and basically, just my comment in the video is well, if they want to make that change, well, now's the time to do it. Obviously, they didn't want to make that change, and that's understandable. Of all the things I bring up in that Origins video, I'm not even necessarily saying that they should have made the change. when it comes to Origins replace Scrap Brain 3. Sometimes I just bring things up as like a talking point and a little opportunity to do a little edit where I put the Sonic Crackers level over Scrap Brain. Like, oh, that'd be kind of interesting, and then just kind of move on from the point. But yeah, there's a lot of comments about Scrap Brain too, and I just want to say, well, I'm not mad that Scrap Brain is the way it is. It's just an idea, you know? Oh, like, originally they wanted it to be a different zone, and if they still wanted to make that change, well, here's the opportunity to do it. They didn't want to make that change, and you know what? That's honestly fine. Alright. But now we gotta go to Sonic CD. The only thing I really have to talk about with Sonic CD, something I made a little bit of a fuss about in that video, and again, I stand by it. Taking the voice out of Sonic CD is like, it's such a small change that it makes it so weird that they would actually take the effort to do it. There's been a few comments that point out it's for continuity's sake. It's like, oh, Sonic doesn't talk in Sonic 1, but he does in Sonic 2, so it would be jarring. And then he goes back to not talking in Sonic 3, and it's like, well, sure, but he doesn't talk. He says, yeah, and he says, I'm out of here. I think the problem with the silent Sonic thing is that it's kind of implied that classic Sonic, because he doesn't talk, it's like, oh, he can't talk. So like, even in the Sonic CD opening, when he's doing all these acrobatic moves and like, you know, the rocks start to fall, there's not a chance where he would go like, whoa. It's like that there'd be no exasperation whatsoever from classic Sonic because he can't talk. Like, sure, sometimes it's just better that he doesn't talk, like in the Sonic Mania Adventures animations and even the animations in Origins. I mean, it's just like old cartoons. You don't really need them to talk. The actions kind of speak for themselves, and that's kind of the style that I feel like they're going for, which is cool. But this whole idea that just classic Sonic does not talk whatsoever, it just doesn't sit well with me because it wasn't true until Generations came out. I'll get to that in a minute, but basically all I'm saying is when it comes to continuity, I really don't see anybody's immersion being broken because Sonic says yeah when you get a life in one of the games and not in the others, because there's other changes between games that aren't carried over, aren't copied and pasted, and you can just be like, oh yeah, it's a different game, so there's going to be some differences. It's a different game, it's a different island, you know, it's a different story essentially, but I really don't see the continuity or the immersion being a factor. Like, think about back in the 90s, like you have your Sega Genesis hooked up, and obviously you got Sonic 1, 2, and 3 because, I mean, why would you have a Genesis without those games? And if you were lucky enough to have a Sega CD attached also, most likely you would have had Sonic CD. And it wouldn't be an unlikely scenario that you're gonna, you know, dedicate like a whole day to playing through Sonic 1, playing through Sonic 2, you know what, let's play Sonic CD, and then let's play Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. And even though that's not a collection, those are all just the same games on the same system, and I don't think anybody's immersion was broken at the time either. Like, playing through Sonic 1 on the Genesis, everything's good. Play through Sonic 2 on the Genesis, everything's great. Play through Sonic CD, and suddenly he has a voice. And I just can't continue on. He's got a voice now. Does he have a voice in 3? Oh no, how does this all fit together? Like, I don't want this to sound petty, but I just don't see that being the case. So the real reason that makes this change in Origins so upsetting to me is not just because the voice isn't there. I mean, that doesn't really change anything. It's like, okay, I get a sound effect instead of voice. I mean, that doesn't ruin my day. The thing that makes it so weird is also something that really just doesn't sit well with me about Sonic Generations. Sonic Generations, great game. It's one of the best in the series, as many people will say. But the whole silent Sonic thing in that game is weird to me, and has always been weird to me. First off, just seeing two Sonics in one place, that's uncanny. Much as I like Sonic Generations, that's weird. I don't like it. Two Sonics in one place should not happen. And, you know, there's been rumors for a long time that Jaleel White, the voice of Sonic in all the old cartoons, they were talking about getting him involved in Sonic Generations to voice classic Sonic. And honestly, I would love to see that. I mean, honestly, I love Urkel Sonic. And I think there's also rumors about Ryan Drummond, voice of Adventure Sonic. There's rumors about him also being the voice in Generations. So the idea of classic Sonic having a voice wasn't completely off the table for Sega. But for one reason or another, they ended up being like, alright, he's going to be silent. And instead of just having that as is, like, oh yeah, he didn't really talk in the old games, he's not going to talk now, and then just leaving it at that, they had to really go in and, like, stand strong in that stance. Classic Sonic does not talk whatsoever. He doesn't talk. Even when he's doing these acrobatic actions in the cutscenes, there's not a chance that he could, like, say, whoa, ah, or anything like that. He has no aspirations of any point. Is that the word for, like, vocalizing? Maybe not, but it's what I'm rolling with. But the strangest part about this whole Silent Sonic thing is, I mean, they could have just left it at that and it would have been fine enough. Since they're really doubling down on it, then it makes you think. When it comes to Sonic Generations, sort of the implication of Generations is that it's two different points in time, right? Classic Sonic is him in the past, modern Sonic is him in the present, and then later on in Forces, it was kind of changed that Classic Sonic is Sonic from a different dimension, which is already even weirder. Kind of like the Blaze situation where in 06 she's a time traveler, in Rush she's from another dimension. So I mean there's already discrepancies with the Sonic lore, let's be honest. But unless I'm mistaken, I think the understanding in Generations is it's just two different points in time. So that would imply that there is a point in time between Sonic 3 and Knuckles, maybe even Sonic R or Sonic 3D Blast. It implies that there's a point in time where Sonic couldn't speak, and then he kind of gained the ability to speak. And it's sometime between Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, whatever, however the timeline fits, and Sonic Adventure. Because he speaks pretty fluently in Adventure. I know that there's already like explanations on why Sonic has green eyes, why his eye color changes. It used to be black, now it's green. And instead of just understanding that, oh yeah, that's just a character revision, that's just what happens with works of fiction. Instead of that, it has to be, oh, Sonic got imbued with chaos energy and it changed his eye color. The chaos energy caused him to go from short and squat to tall and thin. It's like they don't have to make an explanation for everything. I'm surprised there isn't an explanation for why his voice changes between games. But if we explain certain things and not others, and we really double down on certain changes that don't really need that much thought put into them, well then it only opens the door to asking, what is the point in time when Sonic couldn't talk to when he could talk? And I think that's what Forces tries to do with being like, oh no, he's from a different dimension. It's a dimension of Sonic where he just straight up cannot talk whatsoever. Disregard all of the cartoons and the ads and, ooh, he's talking in CD, let's take that out. So this implication that Sonic could never talk is just, it's just stupid. I'm sorry, it's stupid. His voice was in the game, his voice was in the cartoons. Sure, cartoons, they're not canon, whatever, it's still classic Sonic. Some iteration of him. The OVA movie, Sonic CD, he has Yeah, and I'm Outta Here. Or if you're really pedantic, I'm Outer Here with an ER. Try to explain that one. But even if you go to the manuals, which, since the manuals seem to be kind of looked at as like the holy word of the classic games, like, oh sure, in the games you don't see kind of the story elements taking place, but you open the manual and it explains it, and it's like, alright, there's still room for them to say, oh, that's a translation error. Maybe the people that put the manual together aren't the same people that developed the game, so maybe they kind of took their own liberties. Kind of like how all of the old cartoons kind of had their own liberties where they make their own story. I don't think anybody's gonna be like, honestly look at me and say, no, the Kintabor story, that's factual. That is the origin story of Sonic. It's like, no, nobody's looking at the Kintabor story, looking at it as it's like the gospel of Sonic. That's the Sonic Bible. That's, yep, Ovi Kintabor. Sonic was, no, he's a brown hedgehog that turned into a blue hedgehog, and isn't there some iteration where he's like a human person and he gets changed into a hedgehog? I don't know, I don't even want to think about any of that. But back to the manuals. In both versions of the Sonic CD manual, there's quotation marks showing that Sonic's speaking. That's in the manuals. The voice is in the game, he speaks in the manuals, he speaks in other forms of media, but yet because they couldn't secure Jaleel White as Sonic in Generations, or maybe they just didn't want to, then they try to change it that he just never could talk. Classic Sonic never could talk. I don't know what you're talking about. Classic Sonic, he never talked. Nope, never talked. It's just stupid, I'm sorry. Wait, why did that go off? Alright, so Silent Sonic, I'm calling it. I stand by what I said in that video. I really don't see it being a matter of continuity, and I don't think anybody's immersion is really being broken by hearing Sonic say, yeah. But really, this issue is much greater than Sonic Origins. It's Sega pushing the Silent Sonic model that came after Sonic Generations. They're trying to gaslight all of the fans into thinking Sonic never talked. But you know what? I've got evidence. I know he talked. You might keep Sonic silent, Sega, but you'll never keep me silent. I'm on to you. Alright. So, I'm just putting this here. Self-vindicated. Classic Sonic used to talk, he's not now. And it's not even an issue with Origins. So let's just move on. Alright, so one of the biggest pushbacks is Super Tails in Sonic 2. Just like how I wanted Super Sonic to be playable in Sonic 1 without the cheats, I just think it would be more fun to play as Super Tails in Sonic 2, again without the cheats. It's really more about having a reward for getting the emeralds than anything else. So the explanation, the official explanation is basically, oh, Tails, he's not experienced enough, so he can't turn super like Sonic can. Which, I mean, for the time, I guess that's good enough of an explanation, but I think there's a little bit more going on than that. Again, I could be mistaken, but I don't think any of that inexperienced Tails explanation is in any of the manuals showcased within the game. Just kind of like a after the fact explanation, kind of like playing along with curious fans, like hey, why can Sonic go super but Tails can't? Like, oh well, instead of saying, well, there's technical reasons, or we just didn't have the idea for it when Sonic 2 came out, doing this kind of playing along thing where you're just, oh, let's add it to the lore. Oh, he's inexperienced, that's why he can't turn super. Sonic can because he's got experience, and Knuckles, by the time Sonic 3 and Knuckles comes out, Knuckles, he's one with the Master Emerald, he can do it. Tails, he can't, except if he gets all of them. Which, sure, that works as just a little, bandage over the lore. Just, okay, that's good enough. Like, okay, it's a interview explanation, good enough to kind of bridge the gaps, but to hold all future releases of the game back because of that interview explanation that's after the fact, I think that's a bit weird. So when it comes to Sonic 2, I think more than anything, they wanted to reward the player with a new form after getting all the emeralds, so they created Super Sonic. But since Tails was basically like just a side character in that game, sure, he follows you in the normal run, and you can play as him, but his story in that game is just kind of extra, I guess. Like, again, if you stick to the canon views of these games, the canon playthrough of Sonic 2 would be you play as Sonic with Tails following you, and you collect all the emeralds. Anything else is just considered a non-canon playthrough. You don't get all the emeralds? Alright, non-canon. You play as just Sonic or just Tails? Non-canon. So because of that, they wouldn't really have any reason to implement a Super Tails other than, yeah, that would be fun to play as him, which they might have considered at the time, or maybe they just didn't consider at all because it's like, oh no, that's a Sonic ability. It's called Super Sonic. It's not called Super Tails. When Sonic 2 came out, it wasn't even a super form, it was just Super Sonic. That's what Sonic does when he has all the emeralds. It wasn't until 3 and Knuckles that it got applied to other characters, such as Knuckles. I think it's fully possible that they either just didn't consider anyone else using this ability because, oh, Sonic's the main character, that's why he has it. Or it could have been some technical limitation that made it so it wasn't very easy to do as Tails. Though he plays a lot like Sonic, so I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want to change his color palette or whatever. It could even be something as simple as, well, Tails is already yellow, kind of orangish, so turning him golden won't really look that different. So let's just not even bother. I'm just speculating, of course. But I think the biggest issue I have with this inexperienced Tails explanation is Tails can do everything Sonic does. Like, I know, like, in the grand scheme of the lore, we understand that Sonic is faster than Tails. I mean, he's the fastest thing alive, okay. But at least within the games, Tails spins his tails together in such a way that he can keep up with Sonic. I mean, that's already saying a lot. Because he has two tails, he can manipulate them in a way that he can keep up with the fastest thing alive. You can already, in that game, play as Tails and do everything Sonic does. You can go through all the same zones. You can defeat Dr. Eggman as Tails alone. He can even fly with his tails, which is something Sonic can't do. Sure, in the original game you can't do it in gameplay, but he can still do it when he's like catching up. Every time Tails dies and comes back. Obviously that's not an actual lore thing, Tails being able to reincarnate. But yeah, when Tails was first introduced in his very first game, he can do everything Sonic can do, except go super. And somehow he's inexperienced. And if you look at these Chaos Emeralds, they are like this ultimate power source. They can change the properties of certain things, they can power planes and devices, they can do incredible things. And you're saying they can't change this fox into being a little bit more powerful because he's not ready for it. I mean, it just sounds like such a unthought out explanation to me, because it probably is. Like, it's, unless somebody can find other sources, like, it's even hard, like, I couldn't even really find the actual interview. It's just kind of people referencing this interview, where they're just like, oh yeah, he's inexperienced, that's why. I couldn't even find a date if it was an interview after Sonic 2, after 3 and Knuckles. So, I mean, honestly, I don't know. But to hold so closely onto just a after-the-fact explanation, both from the fans and from Sega, trying to keep their lore details together whenever they feel like it, it's a weird one to stand by. I mean, Tails even has the ability to find the Chaos Emeralds. Like, he can access special stages, he can collect them, which I'm sure is not something that just anybody can do, or else Ricky the Squirrel would be going around collecting emeralds here and there. But that's only half the explanation for a Super Tails. We're gonna continue the discussion about Super Tails. We gotta look at Sonic 3 next. Specifically Origin Sonic 3, but also the original release. So I already brought up the idea that, you know, in Sonic 2, maybe they just didn't think of this being as a Tails thing. Like, okay, it's a Sonic-focused game, so it's a Sonic exclusive ability. It doesn't have to have a big explanation, it's just, oh, that's just what Sonic does. But then we go to Sonic 3. In Sonic 3, he also doesn't have the ability, but it's important to note that Sonic 3 and Knuckles wasn't released as the full experience that it was meant to be. Let's not pretend that Sonic 3 had a, you know, perfectly smooth development. I mean, they split the game in half because of a McDonald's promotion. I think that already says a lot about the permanence in some of their decisions. I mean, Sonic 3, just as it is, contained a good amount of zones, but still, since Super Sonic was only available in Sonic 2, And since Sonic 3 has no reason to add Knuckles in yet, like, alright, well here, Sonic can turn super. Since Tails didn't in 2, we just won't make him super yet. Also, there is a prototype where, like, Super Tails is kind of available. Now I'm talking like actual Super Tails, not Hyper Tails called Super Tails after getting all the Super Emeralds. It gets confusing because it's Super form, but Super Emeralds are not the regular Emeralds. But I mean, you know what I'm talking about. So prototype, obviously the prototype never released, so I wouldn't count that as official. Kind of like the Dropdash being in Sonic 3 prototype, just saying. But just the fact that a Super Tails and then a Hyper Tails are both seen within a prototype version of 3 and Knuckles already kind of shows that they at least considered it when it came to 3. And it could have been messed up when they divided the game in half. It was like, alright, well, we just won't add Super Tails yet. Either it was a technical reason, because again, getting these 2 games to work together, getting one out by the time the McDonald's promotion needed to happen, and then months later when And Knuckles came out, it wasn't exactly a smooth sailing experience for them, most likely. But I'm sure it was priority to have Knuckles be able to change because, yeah, he is the keeper of the emeralds. They wanted Knuckles to be able to have that form. Thing about Tails in Sonic 3 is just like how I said he's kind of a side character in Sonic 2. You know, he's only really meant to follow Sonic during his playthrough, but you can play as him. In Sonic 3, he kind of takes the back seat for the whole experience. I mean, even Sonic and Knuckles, its standalone release, you know, the one with the lock-on. You load up Sonic and Knuckles, Tails isn't even in the game. If you want Tails in Sonic and Knuckles, you have to do the lock-on and play from the beginning of 3 through Launch Base, and then you get to Mushroom Hill as Tails. I remember when I first found that out as a kid, it was like a secret, like, hey, I can actually play Sonic and Knuckles as Tails? Yeah, they didn't even add him into the Sonic and Knuckles portion. Not even like when you're Sonic, Tails follows you. It's just Sonic and just Knuckles. So I mean, that right there just shows you that Tails was never the priority. Sure, he has that cool opening at the beginning where he's flying the plane, Sonic jumps off, goes super, so he's in it at that point. But then for the rest of the game, it's just, oh yeah, Tails is there. He does have some interactions with Knuckles. Any of the scenes where Sonic would be there, where Tails is there instead, except for the opening, because in Tails' opening, like before Origins, he didn't get his own opening. You start the game and he just starts at Angel Island. No explanation or anything. Another detail that shows you that Tails was never really their focus. You could play as him, but you don't get an opening, and he's not in Sonic & Knuckles, the base game. So applying all of that, you know, when they split the games, then they put them back together after N Knuckles came out. Prototype had Super Tails, Hyper Tails, and they just didn't release it that way. They're like, alright, we were working on a super form. Let's not go through all the work to add super form and then hyper form like we did with Sonic and Knuckles. Let's just give him one hyper form at the end. Since he didn't have a super form, we'll just call this one Super Tails, and that'll be that. Nobody's going to play as Tails anyway. They're going to play as Sonic because he's the main guy, and they're going to play as Knuckles because he's the new badass kind of rival. It'll be fun. Which, I mean, I've always been a Tails guy. Tails has always been my favorite. Probably because like when I was a kid, I would play as Tails because I was too young to really know what I was doing. So my brother would play as Sonic and do all the heavy lifting. But when it came to boss fights, that's where I would shine. Because it doesn't matter how many times you die as Tails, he'll always come back. I mean, another point about Sonic and Knuckles, I mean, they are the focus in Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Sonic's the main guy who he does all the stuff he needs to do. And then Knuckles, he doesn't have the same playthrough because obviously he would have some conflicts with, we're just going to do a sprite swap where Sonic stops him and takes, like, it just doesn't work out. So Knuckles' playthrough, if I understand it correctly, takes place after Sonic's playthrough. It doesn't happen at the same time. It's not like, oh, this is what Knuckles did to get to this point to then stop Sonic from proceeding on forward. And there are little hints to that with like Angel Island not being in the sea anymore, but it's in the sky. The Death Egg not being there later on. Little like background elements that kind of support that. sort of theory. I don't know if it's ever been confirmed. But yeah, Knuckles has a fully, like, unique story. You go through the same zones, but you take different paths. But he has a different reason for going about it that way. Since Tails was never the focus, he's just a copy and paste of Sonic's path. Since Tails was supposed to be following Sonic, canonically. Looking at that, I mean, they just never had the focus on a Super Tails. And that's where the interview comes into play, because then some fans start asking, like, well, Sonic's the main guy, he gets super form. Knuckles now gets the super form. Why does Tails only get a super form after getting all of the emeralds? And then they have the explanation, instead of coming out and saying, it's technical limitations, or we just didn't have the time to add it, or anything like that. You know, again, just kind of play along. Oh, the reason he can't, he's just inexperienced, so he needs all of the emeralds to transform. Never mind the fact that his form, even though it's called super form, it's, like I said in the video, it has all the intensity of a hyper form. So if he really needed all of the super emeralds in order to transform into a basic transformation, he wouldn't have hyper attack flickies and like the extra speed added on top or anything. He would just be basic Super Tails, as we can now currently see him as in, you know, the cheat mode in Sonic 2 and in the Origins mode of Sonic 3. So speaking of Origins Sonic 3, they added a Super Tails to differentiate from Hyper Tails. So you get 7 Chaos Emeralds, and there you go. He's ready to go. He can turn super. And it seems like a few people are kind of upset with that decision, because alright, I'm not trying to make fun when I say this, I'm genuinely asking. When you're playing the game as Tails, and you're going through, and you get 7 Chaos Emeralds, out of like muscle memory, just out of like habit, you like attempt to go super, and then you're like, oh yeah, he can't go super yet. And it's like, is there like a smile that forms over your face, eyes light up, and it's like, lore details, yes. This is strengthening the lore of Tails' character. He's not ready yet, and you know what? I'm gonna get all of the Super Emeralds, and then he's ready. Again, like, I'm not trying to be petty, and I'm not trying to make fun or anything. It's just, like, I'd never had that viewpoint, even after reading the official explanation. It's just always been, like, a more technical standpoint for me. Like, okay, Sonic can go super, Knuckles can go super. If Tails can't go super, it's probably due to some sort of limitation. They didn't put enough time in development, they didn't care enough to add it, I don't know. It's like playing these games in the 90s on the actual Genesis, I think the story elements didn't really matter as much, just because of the sole fact that in most cases you do have to open up the manual to get the story. Sonic 1, 2, and CD to an extent. CD has a little bit more. 3 and Knuckles is where the story was actually like put into the game to some capacity. I don't know. All I'm trying to say is like playing these games back then, you never just looked at it as like, oh, I wish I could beat Super Tails. I wish I got rewarded for collecting all these emeralds like I can with Sonic and Knuckles, but you know what? It's just part of the story. I feel like that's kind of a cop-out on the developers' explanations. But I think the strangest thing about the whole Origins Sonic 3 Super Tails situation is like now that Super Tails is available, you know, like base version Super Tails, not Hyper Tails called Super Tails. Like some fans are like rejecting that, like, oh, that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not a fix. That's a mistake. They should have not done that. But again, unless anybody has any like solid evidence for this, they're putting a interview explanation above what's actually seen in this re-release of the game. And it's like, okay, so why didn't they add it into Sonic 2? Well, the real reason, I think, is just because the Sonic 2 remaster was already done. They added a couple things like coins and Dropdash, but taking the extra step to make Super Tails fully playable in the game without the cheats, that's just probably a few extra steps that they didn't feel like taking. But then again, you have to ask, well, why did they make Tails not unlockable? And it's like, none of this is ever going to make perfect sense. Like, there's inconsistencies throughout the whole thing. Tails and Knuckles aren't canon to Sonic 1, but you can play for them from the rip. But you can't use Super Sonic. Super Sonic is in Sonic 2. You can be in Knuckles and Tails in Sonic 2, even though Knuckles was the first non-canon edition back in 1994. And that everybody was cool with. Oh, it's awesome. You get to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2. That is awesome. Wouldn't it also be awesome to play as Super Tails? You can be Super Knuckles in Sonic 2. One thing I also point out in that video is in Knuckles in Sonic 2, he's still facing Eggman. So if we're gonna like really focus on continuity, shouldn't they switch out for Egg Robo? Even if it's understood it's not a canonical playthrough, wouldn't you still want to make some things unified, such as Egg Robo going against Knuckles? Since Sonic 2 takes place before Sonic 3, even in a non-canonical playthrough? I'm just saying. But I think just the best point to make, besides that, I mean, it's already not consistent, is that if they're already making some non-canonical decisions, then that just opens the door to making more of them. Tails playable in Sonic 1? That's cool. So if I think about like the real reasons why, say, Super Sonic wasn't in Sonic 1, it's not really because he didn't have all the emeralds, it's because when Sonic 1 was being developed, they didn't have the idea for Super Sonic. Why does they have 6 emeralds instead of 7? Well, the cool story explanation is that the 7th Chaos Emerald hasn't reawakened yet or something. Which, alright, explain this one to me. In every single Sonic game, except for Sonic 1, in every single other game that features the 7 Chaos Emeralds, all 7 of those emeralds are collected within the course of that game. The only exception of that is Sonic 1. Why would that be the only case where the 7th one is just somewhere else? You pick any game in the series, all 7 Chaos Emeralds are going to be collected within the course of the game. That's the whole reason why they even implemented the Super Emeralds, is because Sonic 3 had to have all the emeralds. Sonic and Knuckles had to have all the emeralds. Well, we're not going to have 14 emeralds, so we give them a super transformation. There we go. Hyper transformation. Super emeralds. Getting all the super emeralds gives you a hyper form, but the basic emeralds give you super form. But the transformation of the emeralds themselves is super transformation, because they're not normal, they're super. Ugh, so much. And then there's already the whole discussion, are hyper emeralds canonical? And I think for the most part, it was kind of agreed on that no, they're not. They're not canon. And then at some point, I think they said, no, they are canon. They just don't have any reason to reappear within the context of any story. I don't know. Sonic lore is never going to fit together as nicely as us fans want it to, and that's why I think I'm fully justified in wanting anniversary modes that include everything. I mean, am I wrong for that? I think the real reason Sonic 1 had 6 emeralds is just because when they were looking at the game, looking at the stages, the way that you obtain these emeralds, how it's like you get 1 chance in each act, or 1 chance in 2 of the acts. Act 3 you can't get it in. They look at the number of chances you get, and the number they landed on was 6. Like, okay, 6 is a good number. You know, you'll have a good amount of chances to get it. Once you get 6, alright, good ending. And then probably a lot of fans were a little bit upset when you did get all 6 emeralds and there wasn't an actual reward other than a few sprites being switched out on the ending. So when Sonic 2 came out, let's change that. Let's really give them a reward for collecting them all. And since you get the emeralds from save points instead of finishing the act, let's bring it up to 7. 7's a better number anyway. Who doesn't like the number 7? From a technical standpoint, I think that's a more thorough explanation. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I don't have any like inside knowledge on these things, but I think it goes a little bit beyond just the story explanations that they came up with after the fact, you know? But then with all of that, I have to wonder just how deep does the lore go, though? Is there a lore explanation for when Sonic learned how to do the spin dash? Is there a point in the story where he couldn't do it and then he gained the ability? Because Sonic 2 starts and he can just do it. And if that is the case, then what's up with Sonic Jam and most other releases like Sonic Genesis and Sega Ages giving him the spin dash? Shouldn't he not be able to have that because of lore reasons? Or is it just a thing where it's like, oh, that is not covered in the lore, that one doesn't matter, that's just a move you do, that doesn't matter. But then I think about Egg Robo in Knuckles' Flying Battery. So you play the original Sonic and Knuckles as Knuckles, and instead of Egg Robo being at Flying Battery, you have Robotnik. Eggman. So then I just have to wonder, when is it a lore detail and when is it a mistake? Because I think everyone can get on the same page that Eggman being there wasn't really a mistake, like whoops, we accidentally had him there, but it was a technical limitation. They didn't have the sprites or whatever, so they just threw Robotnik there. What point can you admit that it's a technical limitation or you didn't have the time to do it, and at what point do you have to come up with some explanation? Because again, I feel like a lot of these explanations are just kind of like bandage after the fact lore details just to kind of tie it together, even if it wasn't the intention from the start. So is there an explanation somewhere out there where Dr. Robotnik came back to Flying Battery and to check up on Knuckles and decided to rough him up a little bit and then go back to doing what he was doing? Or when they were asked about that, where they're just like, oh yeah, that's a mistake, something about the sprites and whatnot. I mean, I'm actually curious. It might sound like I'm saying this condescendingly, like that's just my tone. I'm genuinely curious about that. I'm sure there might be interviews or explanations out there somewhere. But if there's already, these limitations present, like Spin Dash not being in Sonic 1, even though I think they wanted to implement it, if I'm not mistaken. They had an idea for it. Egg Robo not being there in Flying Battery, then couldn't the same be true for Super Tails? It's just the day they were asked, Yuji Naka or whoever did the interview was like, you know what? Yeah, we wanted Tails to go super, but we couldn't. Instead, it's like, yeah, it's a lore detail. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not buying it. Tails can do everything Sonic can do except go super, unless he has all of the emeralds. I mean, all of the supercharged emeralds. He can still collect the emeralds and access Hidden Palace and present the emeralds so that their power gets superized, however that works, then continue to find them and then switch. I just think it's better when you get a reward for collecting the 7. That's all I'm saying. But I feel like I'm just kind of rambling and repeating myself at this point. What I will say is I don't think these pieces were ever meant to fit in perfectly, and it's just kind of fun to put them together, just like in Zelda, where initially I doubt that it's meant that all of the Hyrules are in one timeline or one series of timelines and they fit together in some way. It's just no, I mean, we did Hyrule, let's also do this Hyrule. Yeah, that's Link, we'll do Link again. Zelda, I mean, it's named after Zelda. Because if certain games are in the same timeline, then why is Death Mountain moving from here to there? Why does Kakariko Village look different and it's there and here? Why is Hyrule Castle in the center here and then this one, it's over there? Why is the landmass changing to accommodate for this? That only really makes sense in Wind Waker to an extent because the world is flooded. And it's but I mean, really, it's just fun as a fan to come up with the theories and put them all together and see, oh, this could be taking place after this could be an event that leads to this, and it's all good until the official company comes out with a explanation oh no, there's really 3 timelines and one of them comes from a game over. And it's oh, it kind of kills some of the fun. Just like Sonic. Or why can Tails not go super? Inexperienced. Oh, okay. Cool. So I'm just gonna play through and just be normal Tails. Tails is already the easy mode, so if their concern is that, oh, giving him super form would be too easy, doesn't really add up because it's already easy mode, and you already did the special stages, which those don't really turn to easy mode as Tails, so you're putting in the same effort as playing with Sonic. But, I mean, more than anything, I feel like just some of these subtleties, some of these changes don't really need to be addressed, either by official comment from the developers or even by fans. We could just have a silent update for quality of life. The video I'm working right now is Crisis Core. Crisis Core Remaster just came out, and one, change that you might not even notice in the game is that the hilt of the Buster Sword, in the original version of Crisis Core, it's modeled after the Advent Children Buster Sword. In this new version of Crisis Core, it's modeled after the Buster Sword seen in the original game and in the 7 remake. It's already weird that the Advent Buster Sword would be in a prequel game, but Square Enix, instead of coming up with some convoluted explanation Angeal originally had that design, and he passed that on to Zack. But when Zach passed it on to Cloud, he's like, I want to make some changes. I don't like how this looks. So he changes it to the Buster Sword we all know and love. But then after the events of 7, before Advent Children starts, he makes some changes to it to change the hilt. And he's like, I want to do that, make it in its original form, the way that Angeal used to have it. I mean, that's like a convoluted explanation that doesn't really need to be there. It got dark again. Oh well, I'm almost done with this anyway. It's kind of a convoluted explanation that doesn't really need to be there. So instead of like putting out that explanation, they just silently update it in the new remaster. Like, oh, okay, that's the Buster Sword we all know and remember. It's not the Advent Children one. And I think that's fair enough. But on the flip side of that, look at the Kingdom Hearts series, which that's a whole nother can of worms talking about Kingdom Hearts lore. But at the very end of Kingdom Hearts 1, the only scene Mickey appears in, he's in his like normal form, like, you know, his regular Disney Mickey Mouse look where he's got the red shorts and no shirt. And you don't really think much of it because that's just how Mickey Mouse looks. Then when Chain of Memories comes out, they give him a Tetsuya Nomura approved outfit where he has a shirt, he has his shorts and whatnot. And then that continues on to Kingdom Hearts 2 where he has that outfit. So when 1.5 comes out, the remaster of final mix versions of Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories, 358 over 2 days. Instead of, I mean, what they could have done was just like silently updated it, and then you look at that scene and, oh, he's wearing a shirt now. And I think that would have just been good enough to, like, you know, silent update, and it's like, oh, okay, he's got a shirt now, cool. It's always implied that he should have a shirt. Instead of doing that, in Kingdom Hearts 2.8, when you play as Aqua in the Realm of Darkness, they actually have a scene where you're running along and Mickey's there, he has a shirt on, and like the Heartless or some darkness in some form comes and destroys his shirt, it disintegrates, so then he can proceed to be behind the door to darkness, door to light, whatever it is, put his Keyblade up in the air, and match the original scene where he didn't have a shirt on. That's a lore detail that they didn't really need to do, and it's so funny that they did, and I'm not even mad that they did. It's just very laughable that they would kind of do that, and that's just kind of how I feel about some of the Sonic explanations. They're never meant to, like Kingdom Hearts, yeah, that's kind of meant to fit together, even if not every aspect was already thought about. Sonic the Hedgehog's lore isn't bulletproof by any means. There's some situations where they could just do a silent update and be like, no, that was always our intention, or we figured it would be a good add-on, and then call it that, call it a day, but they didn't. And I feel like the people at Sega probably got sick of trying to like back up old explanations, and then that's when they come out with the meme that everything's canon. Yeah, everything's canon. There's even people saying, oh, that wasn't actually a meme, it's correct. Everything is canon, it's just it's canon to itself. Isn't that just what stories are? Isn't every story canon to itself? And the whole idea of having a canon is that you can look at what is meant to be part of the main picture and what is just kind of like a fun little side experiment. Saying that everything's canon to itself is kind of defeating the purpose of a canon. But it's hard to gauge any of this because Sega really picks and chooses when the lore matters. Like, it's prime example in Origins, where I know I'm repeating this like a dead horse, but Tails shouldn't be in Sonic 1, but yet he is. That's cool. Super Sonic shouldn't be in Sonic 1, and he isn't. Super Tails shouldn't be in Sonic 2, and he isn't, but Super Tails is in Sonic 3, you know, as his, like, primitive super form, not his hyper super form. And it's like, sometimes the lore details matter, and sometimes they don't. Why don't they just add on to Sonic 2 and make him Super Tails then, if that's how it should be? Well, the remaster's already done. They did a little bit of effort to change the lives to coins and give you the Dropdash, but the code it would take to implement Super Tails into a normal run as Tails is probably a bit more than they felt like doing. I doubt it was really to preserve Sonic 2 lore. Maybe that's how it was back in 2013. Maybe they cared a bit more back then. Just like with Sonic CDs re-released, that was the first remaster of one of the classic games with Sonic CD. And Christian Whitehead wanted to add Desert Dazzle into the game and Final Fever. And Sega kind of shot it down because they wanted it to be, you know, close to the original. which is fair, but in my opinion makes the re-release a little less exciting. And then 2013 came along 2 years later, and they're like, alright, well, we'll add Tails and Knuckles as an unlockable, and if you access the cheat menu, we can give you Super Sonic. But that's it. We're still kind of keeping it down to brass tacks with the lore, if that's even the right saying. Sonic 2 was like, alright, we'll add in Hidden Palace Zone, but it's gonna be hidden. It's gonna be a little secret. You gotta know the spot to fall down in to get there. We're not adding it as an actual zone. And then Knuckles, I mean, Knuckles was already available in 1994 in Sonic 2, and they're just like, well, okay, you don't gotta unlock him in this one, even though he's not supposed to be there as far as lore goes. You didn't have to unlock him. I mean, I guess you kind of unlock him with Sonic and Knuckles because you have to buy the game, and that's the unlock for it, but that's beside the point. But it's been 9 years since that, and I feel like their stance on certain things must have changed, as evident by some of the changes in Sonic 3. Super Tails, prime example, they kind of just stopped caring about the old explanation. Maybe they never even held to it too much. They were just like, alright, sure, whatever. It's the way it was, that's the way we'll keep it. And then they just didn't want to put in the extra work to make Sonic 1 and 2 even better in Origins, except for Dropdash and whatnot. But also, when it comes to lore with Sonic, especially back in the classic era, which is kind of the era in question right now, it's kind of irrefutable that they didn't hold too strongly onto the lore at that time. The translations between the Japanese and the US manuals aren't one-to-one. Any cartoon that bought the rights to make a Sonic cartoon, they were kind of free to just make their own story. And elements in future games didn't really hold true to all the same stuff that was in the original games. It was just never meant to fit together so perfectly. Fast forward to nowadays, lore is all over the place, especially after the Adventure era, up until 06 and around then. Let's put it right at Sonic Colors. Where Sonic Colors, that's where it changed, kind of being not necessarily slapstick kind of comedy, but it's kind of just happy in your face kind of humor like the old cartoons had. It's okay, Sonic Colors is that in a way, and for the next few games, they just didn't really apply much lore, especially since they had all these new characters that already had their stories, and they didn't know how to continue those stories unless it's in a racing game or something. And that brings us up to Sonic Frontiers, where they're actually trying to kind of put some of the pieces back together. So it's they stopped caring about the lore for a long time, let's be honest. And now they're alright, well, let's kind of try to put some of it together. But even then, they couldn't be bothered to do it themselves. For weeks straight, I was talking about the Google articles coming up on the phone. There's this one that's Sonic Lore Manager. Sega is hiring somebody to be Sonic Lore Manager. They're looking for an outside hire to do all the lore, piecing together. So it's okay, they care enough that they want to unify it in a way, but not enough to do the work themselves, and I don't blame them. Trying to piece together all of the Sonic lore in a way that the fans will accept is probably an impossible task. I think Tyson Hess and Ian Flynn are also part of that, lore management thing, and I'm interested to see how the rest of the series will handle it, because I really like how Frontiers it's mostly in a referencing kind of way, hey, remember that time that this happened? Which I think is fine for a game like Frontiers, but following that game, it'd be interesting to see how it's all going to piece together, how they're going to implement all of those things back into the main series, including the slapstick Sonic Colors type games. But yeah, I mean, if everything's canon, then nothing matters. It's like an Assassin's Creed slogan. If everything is canon, then nothing matters. Everything is canon, then everything is permitted. So another angle I'd like to look at is, what is the consequence of a fan thinking that Super Sonic is from the first game? Now, I totally understand wanting correct details solely for the sake of having correct details, such as Sonic CD not having Sonic's voice. The correct detail would just be leave it in, that's how it was. So I mean, I totally understand being right for the sake of being right. But if a newer Sonic fan picks up, let's say, Sega Ages Sonic 1, and they're like, oh no, the spin dash is definitely in Sonic 1. Then an older fan comes along and says, nah, that's just for the re-release. The original game didn't have the spin dash. And then newer fan is like, oh, that makes sense, thanks for letting me know. That's the end of it. Dropdash. Say they pick up Sonic Origins, play Sonic 2. No, the Dropdash is definitely in Sonic 2. I just seen it. The older fan comes along. That's just a feature for Sonic Origins. It wasn't like that originally. Oh, that makes sense. Thanks for letting me know. Shouldn't it be the same thing for Super Sonic? Super Sonic is definitely in Sonic 1. I just saw that. Actually, he wasn't introduced until Sonic 2. That's just a feature of that game. Oh, that makes sense. Thank you. I mean, what's the consequence of not preserving that one kind of minute detail? Like, sure, in the context of the lore, 6 emeralds are here at South Island as incentive to go to West Side Island. You're chasing after the 7th emerald, and I don't know, it just feels like a inconsequential detail. Like, yeah, we all know Super Sonic is from Sonic 2. But if somebody is mistaken about him being in Sonic 1 because they played it in Origins, does that really change anything in the grand context of the Sonic lore? Like, what's even the time span between the two? Does Sonic 2 take place just after Sonic 1? Well, Sonic CD has to factor in some way. You lay out the whole Sonic timeline. No, he didn't get Super Sonic here. He got Super Sonic here. Oh. Okay. Timeline's this big, and it's like, no, it's not here, it's here. I know this video is a mess. Hopefully it isn't too messy. I'm still sitting in the dark, so shows you how the quality of this really is. Again, I'm not really great at doing these like candid to the camera videos, and not even playing the game. Hopefully it's good enough. Anyway, I feel self-vindicated, even if I didn't explain all my points to the best of my ability. I'm just ready to just put Sonic Origins behind me, do Crisis Core, and then jump right back in with Sonic Frontiers. There's some points I want to make about that game, which I think will be fun. And way in the future, we'll get into more Sonic stuff. Controversial Sonic stuff, I'm telling you. Anyway, if you're still watching this monstrosity, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're subscribed. Don't expect videos like these often. I stick mostly to scripts. And thank you for being here. So yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one. I wanna fly.